I'm definitely going to remember this in the morning. Spoiler alert, you don't. Hi guys, my name's Jules and I'm the Dawdling Writer, and today we're going to be talking about the story idea writing tag that was originally by Brooke Passmore. And I've linked her video in the description below, but before we jump into it, don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell for notifications. There are 10 questions in this tag, and the first one is about your current story. What is your current story that you're working on right now? It is a fantasy YA novel. And in a world of magic and swords, a young teenage boy desperately wants to have any kind of magic at all to make his life even a little bit better. But he finds himself becoming the wielder of dark magic, owning a familiar that is known to be the harbinger of death, and he becomes the target of a kingdom-wide manhunt. And it seems like the dark god of death has something that he wants from the main character. I mentioned this particular work in progress on my AuthorTube Newbie Tag post, which I will link up in the iCard. The second question is the spark of inspiration question. Do your ideas begin with characters, plot, world building, or something else entirely? My story ideas often start with questions. I tend to pose what if questions. And so my current story, for instance, started with the question, what if a character in a fantasy world where everybody wields magic, what if this character doesn't have magic? Well, then what if they suddenly get magic, but it's a magic that they never anticipated having? What if it's a magic that everybody's scared of? So those what if questions tend to snowball, and then I get this story idea. So that's how this particular story idea came to be. The third question in this tag is about your brainstorming process. And how do you puzzle all of your story pieces together? Do you start with the ending and then write the beginning, or vice versa? And I typically start at the beginning of a story. Oftentimes I'm writing by the seat of my pants, so I don't know the ending yet. But I'm also a fan of opening the story sort of in the middle of chaos, in medias res, and then having the character think to themselves, now how did I get here? And then doing the flashback. But that's kind of like a little bit of a cheat, a little bit of a trick for those of us who are a bit indecisive about how we want the story to start. But it's one that I enjoy reading. So I do also have several stories that start that way. The next question is keep or toss. And this is asking, how do you know when you're going to keep a story idea to come back to work to, or when do you just dump it to the side? I've never actually consciously made this decision. It just tends to happen. It happens specifically when I leave a story idea alone long enough that I forget everything that happened in it. I have a few drafts that I printed out, and they sit in a drawer somewhere. In fact, I have one of the first drafts that I ever wrote, which this one was one that I wrote in 9th grade, between 8th and 9th grade, and it has been sitting in a drawer in the bottom of one of these little storage units back here, the very bottom drawer. So it just kind of dies a death smothered in dust, I guess. I have also lost a couple of drafts and story ideas when switching computers, or like the files have become corrupted when the writing processor software gets an update and then the files don't convert correctly. So Microsoft Word, I've lost a few story ideas to that. The next question is about your original idea and how much of your original story idea is actually used by the time you get through the story. For me, not all of it gets used because when I write, I do try and outline. I'm not great at it, but I tend not to outline every little detail because then I feel like I'm bored of the story. Like if I know everything that's going to happen, I feel bored. And I tend to just drop the story. I have several like complete outlines of stories, but once I knew the end, I just didn't write them. So when I do outline, it tends to be kind of sketchy at best. And that way, when I start writing, I'm inspired, but then things start to change and deviate from the outline. And so not all the original idea gets used. The next question is hide or share. Do you share your book ideas with friends and family, or do you tend to keep them a secret? Most of the time I keep them secret. I have shared a few things over the years, but that has been sort of like sharing has been the bane of my existence for quite some time, which I also put out a video on that, why I'm scared to share my writing, and I will also link that above and in the description. Dream is the next question. Have any of your story ideas originated with a dream or a nightmare? Yes, absolutely. I have mentioned this before, I think, on the channel. I tend to tell myself stories as I'm falling asleep. And so I don't know if it's because of this, but I tend to have quite an active dreamscape, and I have very vivid dreams quite often. So I have kept a dream journal for quite some time, for several years now, and so I've kept the dream journal. This one is my current one, and I have just story ideas, notes, and some of them are very short and some of them are very long. Some of them I have little drawings. Some of them I forget to turn the page the next day and then I write over the top of another story, so that becomes a bit messy. So sometimes I have to go back and kind of clean things up and figure out what in the world I was trying to say when I was half asleep. But I started keeping a dream journal because I was tired of losing story ideas. And you know, when the dream is so vivid and then you kind of snap awake and you're like, whoa, that was a really wild dream. I'm definitely going to remember this in the morning. Spoiler alert, you don't. So I was very tired of losing my story ideas, so I started keeping the dream journal. And it has helped quite a bit over the years. Next question. The doppelganger question. Have you ever had a story idea and then seen a similar premise in a book, TV show, or a movie? I've never seen the exact same premise, but I do know that all stories tend to kind of fall into archetypes, sort of like basic core elements of storytelling. And so a lot of my stories tend to fall into the rags or riches and the quest or overcoming the monster. So I know that I tend to go back to those core storytelling archetypes, as do a lot of authors. And so I don't necessarily find doppelgangers, but I do find elements of similarity. But I think one of the best things about writing is that two people can see the same event, and when they write it down, the same event or idea, their perspective about life, their biases, their experiences, when they write, then informs a completely different story than what somebody else writes. And so that's one of the fascinating and fun things about writing. There's nothing new under the sun, after all. Next question. Big screen inspiration. Have any of your favorite TV shows or movies sparked ideas for scenes in your story? I'm sure they have at some point. I can't pinpoint one that's clearly an inspiration for any particular story idea or point, but I do know that when I am writing fight scenes, I tend to rely heavily on visualizing movie scenes because I've never been in a fight. I don't have personal experience to inform the imagery and the actions that I'm writing. So I tend to rely on what I've seen from movies for that kind of thing. Next question, and the last one. Nostalgia. What is your oldest or first original story idea you remember coming up with or writing down? I wrote a little story about a girl being bitten and transforming into a werewolf. And this was also in my Why I'm Afraid to Share My Writing video, and I will link that way. There we go. I'm going to get this one day. Those were the 10 questions for the story idea writing tag. And if you see this and you have not made your own tag of this, then please do let me know if you make yours, and I will come and watch it. And make sure that you go and check out Brooke's original. So thank you for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye!